So today, we're going to do something kind of different, and honestly, I find it absolutely fascinating. I want you to clear your mind for a second, okay? Just focus in because we're going to spend the next few minutes doing a deep dive into a single, incredibly powerful modern digital artifact. I mean, think about it. We interact with literally thousands of messages every single day, right? We just swipe past them without a second dot. But what actually happens when we stop, freeze the frame, and truly deconstruct the architecture of a warning? Like, what makes a specific combo of words and symbols so compelling that it completely bypasses our rational brain and taps straight into our primal instincts? Well, let's jump right in and dissect the anatomy of a warning.
But right before we look at our source material, I want you to just sit with a question for a moment. What makes a place truly forbidden? Really think about the psychological weight and the sheer friction of being told you absolutely cannot do something or you cannot go somewhere. You know, when a door is locked, our first instinct usually isn't to just walk away. Actually, scratch that. Our first instinct is almost always to wonder what the heck is behind it. We humans have this deeply ingrained, almost magnetic attraction to the prohibited. And today, we're looking at a text that leverages that exact psychological vulnerability in a really brilliant way. It builds a boundary, but not with barbed wire or a concrete wall. It does it entirely with carefully selected language.
All right, so here is our entire source artifact for today's analysis. Ready? The most dangerous places on Earth you should never visit. And that is followed by a single emoji. I want you to just let the sheer weight of those 10 words and that one little symbol sit with you. In our digital age, this is just a masterclass in microcopy. It's a fully self-contained narrative of peril, curiosity, and absolute restriction. So we're going to break this whole thing down piece by piece, word by word, to understand exactly how this text essentially engineers a physiological reaction right inside the reader.
Okay, starting with Section 1, Defining Extreme Danger. Let's look at the setup.
We're entering the first phase of our linguistic deconstruction here, and we're just going to focus purely on the first half of the phrase. Let's isolate this specific part, the most dangerous places. Notice what is noticeably absent. Right. It doesn't name a specific jungle, it doesn't mention a war zone, and it doesn't point to some treacherous mountain peak. By keeping it completely unspecified, it creates this immediate, overwhelming sense of intrigue. It literally forces your own imagination to do the heavy lifting, filling in the blanks with your own personal worst-case scenarios. And what's really clever here is the use of the superlative, the most. It isn't just a list of dangerous places. No, it's the absolute peak of peril. It instantly dials the jeopardy all the way up to 10.
But the text doesn't just stop there. It deliberately grounds this vague maximum danger with a huge clarifier, on Earth. Why is that so absolutely crucial? Well, because it frames the danger on a planetary scale. It takes this wild, abstract concept of the most dangerous places and plants it firmly right here in our shared global home. It's telling you that this extreme threat isn't in some fictional universe or out in deep space. It is here, literally on the very rock we are all currently standing on. It elevates the stakes from just a local threat to a global, inescapable absolute. The danger is grounded in our reality.
Moving right along to Section 2, the psychology of prohibition. Let's look at the command. Now, having built up this monumental planetary threat, the text does this sharp, aggressive pivot. It transforms from a simple description into an active psychological confrontation. It's a brilliant illustration of core tension. On one side, we have the most dangerous places, which is the lure, right? It's the bait. It's that adrenaline-pumping mystery. Then, directly opposing it, we get you should never visit, the prohibition. Talk about massive psychological friction. It pairs an extreme sensationalist lure directly against an absolute command to stay away. In psychology, they actually call this reactance theory. When someone tells us we are completely forbidden from doing something, we immediately perceive it as a threat to our freedom. And what happens? It triggers this instinctual, reverse psychology urge to push back. We want to look, we want to click, we want to explore. The text is literally weaponizing our own autonomy against us.
And the absolute crux of this trick is embedded right here in one single word, never. Let's do a quick deep dive into this adverb. The warning doesn't say you shouldn't visit right now, or that you shouldn't go without a guide. It says you should never visit. That is an absolute temporal prohibition. Based entirely on the text's own internal logic, it mathematically eliminates any future possibility of safe travel to these places. Never just slams the door shut and completely throws away the key. And honestly, if there's one thing we hate more than danger, it's being told what to do. By leaving absolutely zero room for negotiation, it ironically just amplifies that burning curiosity. You can't help but wonder what could possibly warrant such a permanent, unyielding restriction.
All right, on to our final section, the fear emoji analysis. It's time for visual punctuation.
So we've totally unpacked the linguistic architecture, but we aren't quite done yet. We need to move beyond the letters and words and look at the visual punctuation. When you break down the raw composition of our source material, it's pretty eye-opening. The vast majority of it is those 10 words of text. But notice that tiny remaining slice? It's just one single emoji, representing roughly 9% of the total distinct communicative elements here. Yet somehow, this tiny little fraction of the overall composition carries the absolute emotional climax of the entire sentence. It's a stunning example of how dense modern digital communication really is. A single, pixelated little image can completely rival the emotional output of a fully fleshed out sentence.
And there's exactly just one emotional indicator in the whole text. Think about it. There are no exclamation points at the end. There are no bolded words, no all caps shouting at you. There's just a solitary, stark, graphic symbol that anchors all the dread built up by the preceding 10 words. By limiting the visual punctuation to just this single unit, the text avoids looking, frantic or desperate for clicks. Instead, it looks serious, it looks definitive, and it looks profoundly ominous.
And here it is, isolated in all its glory. The face screaming in fear emoji. Wide, blank eyes, hands clutched to pale cheeks, a mouth stretched wide open in a silent howl. It is basically the modern digital descendant of Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream. This visceral, totally wordless punctuation serves as the ultimate modern warning sign. It completely bypasses the language processing centers of our brain and directly pings our primitive monkey brains with the raw concept of fear. It's actually kind of funny how easily we're tricked by a tiny cartoon face, right? The text did the logical work of explaining the danger and issuing the prohibition, but this symbol makes you feel the dread. It's the exclamation point of the internet age, and it seals the curiosity trap perfectly.
Which brings us to the end of our deconstruction. And back to you. We've pulled apart every noun, every absolute, every psychological hook, and the visual climax of this modern warning. You can see exactly how the trap was built. You understand the friction, the lure, and the absolute prohibition. So the final question I have for you is simply this. Now that you can clearly see the strings being pulled, when you are faced with the absolute prohibition of the most dangerous places on Earth, will you heed the warning, or will human nature compel you to step forward into the dark? Definitely something to think about the next time you encounter a forbidden door. Thanks so much for exploring this with me.